We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully your day is going well. It is, what day is it? Is it Sunday? Yeah, it's Sunday. Sunday. Anyway, we have a guest today, and we've been excited about having this guest on for some time. She's written a few emails, and everybody was quite taken with the emails because they're very thoughtful, very articulate. And so we have the good fortune of having on the show today a woman that we know as Old Soul. Thank you for coming on, Old or OS or Soul or whatever.
Old soul, both just the same.
Now you're coming to us from Nevada, right?
Yep.
Okay. Okay. And I asked you before we came on, and I will just if you, as long as you don't mind. Reason her name is Old Soul is because she's not really old like us, most of us listening to the podcast. She's about 20 years younger than I am. I'm 63. She's actually 21 years younger than I am. So it's a special treat, not only to have a woman on the show, because we get a lot of men. We have some women too. But it's nice to have a woman on the show, and a younger woman at that. Let me ask you, what in the world ever got you listening to this dumbass? What would ever have coaxed you into doing that?
You're on my recommendations feed. And I
Really?
normally don't pay attention to it. And then I clicked on one of yours. It's like a 2-minute video. And I was
Mhm.
like, what did he just say? And then I just started like watching your videos and I said, well, maybe I should subscribe. And
I
then I just subscribed and I kept watching. But I don't know if you know who Mike Malloy is, but I listen to him and I watch him. And I think maybe that's why you came into my recommendations.
Mike Malloy, I think I do. I have to check it out. I probably do. I just don't know the name.
Hmm.
But and well, I appreciate the fact that you did. You've offered some interesting interesting information, and it sounds like from what you were telling me off the show that you're very big into um, volunteering for things. You told me about something that was specifically important to you, and you were volunteering. And I want to make sure we get that on the show. So why don't you just kind of repeat what you were telling me, because I think people will find it interesting.
Yeah, so it's National Abortion Federation, and they
Mhm.
are a group that helps young girls and women have access to abortion care where you stand in a red state and you don't have access to it. You don't have to pay anything, you don't have to do anything. It's prochoice.org. If you go onto the website, there's a number there, but I can give it. It's 800-772-9100. And during the week from 9 to 5, if you don't feel comfortable calling, you can text. So I could be at work and I could be texting another girl, talking to her, and then they have other volunteers too. I don't think we have enough volunteers for the weekend yet, but you can do it through the week. And then they have volunteers like me who have an extra room. And if you come to this state and you need to get that medical care, you can stay with me, get the medical care that you need, and then they'll pay for your trip back home.
Stay with you at your
Because it is,
house?
I don't think I'll,
People stay with you at your house?
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, so they can get the or because I don't know if you know, like there's only like 1% of women who actually have to have like a procedure done. Most of the time, it's the methotrexate or different type of medications. If you can't
Hmm.
access it in your state, or some states, the pharmacist won't sell it to you for religious reasons or whatever.
Hmm.
Just give us a call and we can help you get the medication to your state.
So now
If
you're
you need
you're
the street packaging, stuff like that.
you're in a red state, but it's perfectly legal in Nevada, right?
It's purple,
Okay.
and we're a safe haven state. So our governor Lombardo, he
Hmm.
just signed it in not too long ago. So we are a safe haven state, and which is good because we're right next door to Utah and
That's
all that
bad.
stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, and so some
More
of those girls they need a place to go.
right, right. Now, I've been hearing from you on the show and with your emails and such, and obviously you're interested in 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 politics. Uh, and I'm heartened to know that, be given your age. Uh, I don't know, what would you be? Are you still a millennial at your age? Do you
I
know?
thought I was a Zir, but or Y2Ker. I don't know.
Whatever.
I was born in 82, so whatever
Okay.
82 falls in, that's me.
Okay. Perfect. Um, but most young women around your age, you're dealing with kids, you're dealing with a job, you're dealing with all this stuff. But obviously you've taken an interest in politics, and what was the impetus for you to be interested in politics?
It affects all of us.
Yeah.
And so I know a lot of people, especially in my community, who feel like, oh, it's not helping me directly or it's not affecting me directly. But what they don't understand is when you're not active and other people, even if if I'm in a blue state, but like right now in the House, they're taken over by MAGA world. It
Right.
does affect me. It does affect blue states. So, I just try to be as active as I can, educate people and let them know just because it's another state, it can still affect you. So
Well,
you got to just do wherever you can, where you're at.
I'm curious, with the state of things in this country right now, the racism, the misogyny, the
Ooh.
taking away rights from women. You're a young woman of childbearing age in that area. You happen to be a woman of color.
Mhm.
It's real easy for me to talk about how things are, but I'm an old white guy, so I can talk about what I think, but I can't talk about what I know. And I'm curious, how does somebody in your situation feel with the way things are going right now?
Ah, it's overwhelming, but
Is
I
it?
don't think that, yeah, I don't think that a lot of people are hearing as much from us is because we're sitting back and we're just kind of like watching certain stuff play out. I don't think that like suburban women or white suburban women, they didn't really understand it until those laws started to affect them. So
Right.
now we're just watching them actually feel what it is that we're feeling. And I think they're doing a pretty good job because they've been showing up and they've been voting, but they are seeing the other side of it. I think it was Tennessee not too long ago when the moms went to the council meeting and they were just silently holding signs,
Right.
and the police came in and kicked them out. You
Right.
know what I mean? So I think it impacts them differently if they see a person of color, a woman of color, or a black man going through it. But when it's something that they're experiencing themselves, it hits them a little different. And so I think we're just kind of like watching it play out. And it's not like we want it to happen, but I think that sometimes you have to go through it before you can feel it. And
Uh,
unfortunately, in some of those red states, some of those people they voted for, some of those laws that they voted for, they're starting to feel that.
oh no, the white people starting to feel it. We got to stop this shit. Yeah, you're probably right about that.
Pretty much, yeah. It,
It's
it's it's sad. I feel really, really bad for Florida right now. They are going through it.
I was thinking about our gun problem, and that's obviously another big issue. And somebody suggested an answer to it, how we could make sure that everybody wants to get guns registered and background checks and that. And that would be in all these red states that have free gun laws, that we get a bunch of young black men and give them as many guns as they want and have them walk around for a little bit. All of a sudden, there's going to be some registration. Well, we can't have this. Long
Well,
as you got a
that
redneck, you're
happened.
fine.
That happened during the Black Panther movement.
Yeah,
When you would
exactly.
see them with their guns and they were walking around, all of a sudden we need laws, we need this, we need that.
Right.
It'll definitely change mindsets. However, I think that the political climate right now is kind of like on this bubble. I don't really think that's a good idea at this moment, because it seems like the right is just so reactionary to everything. If anything could trigger them. So
Do,
I,
do,
I don't
do,
know if that's the solution.
do you think the climate with the Donald Trump and the Republicans the way they are, you think it's encouraged more people like you to get involved in politics? I always tell people, I say, when we're talking about abortion, when we're talking about all these things, these poor younger kids like yourself are seeing these old white people determining your destiny. And there's got to be a point where we're going, well, wait a fucking minute, we ain't doing that. These old people aren't going to tell me what I'm going to go through after they're long dead.
I think it made people more aware sooner, because I don't remember being in high school paying attention to politics at all.
Right.
I was just going to school, hanging out, doing whatever I was doing. But now you see kids in school paying attention and they don't have a choice. They're like, I remember my daughter and my niece, she's 9 now, telling me about an active shooter drill at school.
Right.
So they teach them how to get away from shooters. And so you have children like, well, why can't they just take guns away? Why can't they do this? And so it opens up a conversation to explain it to them. I feel bad for a 9-year-old that has to learn about laws and this and that, but I think it just makes them more active younger in politics to pay attention more. And actually, I think that's a good thing, because you don't want to wait until you're 40, 50 to start paying attention,
Right.
especially when it comes to climate change. They know that, okay, yeah, you're not going to die on this planet, but we could probably boil to death or freeze to death.
Right.
They have to pay attention at a younger age. And I think it's a good thing, but then it kind of takes away from the little childhood experiences too, which
Right.
is sad on my side.
I didn't pay as close attention to politics until Donald Trump came into office, and I recognized what kind of guy he was, and I had a feeling about how it would go. So then
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I needed to start to speak out and talk some shit. So I did. I'm curious. One of the things I was talking about, we had the anniversary of the March on Washington and the "I Have a Dream" speech by Martin Luther King, and and the story I was telling was that from that point up until 2015, I'm willing to bet that most white people would say, well, that's good. Racism has really gotten better. Everything's great now. But then Donald Trump comes in, and all of a sudden it's cool to be racist. I think the racism was always there. It's just that they become more brave now and feel like they can come out and talk about it because the president and the other Republicans feel feel open to say whatever the fuck's on their mind. Have you noticed anything since Donald Trump has taken office and the Republicans have gone south with their attitudes? As a young black woman in a purple state, have you noticed anything different? Is it more adversarial? Is it different in any way, your life and how people react to you?
Personally, I think it was always there. It was just more subtle.
Yeah.
And I think they've gotten away with the subtleties, because I've had job interviews to where it's like, okay, I have to change my nail polish to kind of tone it down. You don't want to be the black girl with the braids and the bright pink nails when you go to an interview. That has
Right.
nothing to do with your resume, it has nothing to do with how articulate you are, but it has everything to do with the presentation. So you have to kind of like code switch is what we call it. You have to do that for a little while. Then once you get in there and people are comfortable, then you can do that. So it's always been there. It's just now they don't care to hide it. I think
Right.
they were comfortable telling decent people like yourself, like everything is cool. We're not doing that anymore. But behind the scenes, they were. But now they don't care to, like, I don't know, protect you from those images. They'll just do it out in the open in front of anybody. They don't care who it is. And they say it too. I mean, they are very blatant. I seen
Right.
Jesse Waters and Fox News all of a sudden started saying, Black people, we're going to vote for Trump now because he has a mugshot. So we're supposed to support him because he's a criminal and because he's a thief and because he steals and he lies. And how am I supposed to be able to relate to that? Just you
Right.
just looking at me and you're assuming that I can relate to that, which is very insulting. And I think they know better because
They
these
do.
are educated people. Ted Cruz is educated, Laura Ingraham, she's educated. They're all educated and they know it. It's just they know that they're speaking to an ignorant audience.
Yeah, they're
So
playing to an audience that
they
is
kind of
stupid.
talk that language to.
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine you walking into a job interview and sitting at
Mhm.
the desk and looking across the desk and seeing somebody like me sitting there to do the interview and going, oh shit, here we go. Here we go. This is not going to go well. I can imagine. I mean, I spent some time when I was younger going through interviews and having the older guys sitting there. And even me as a white kid, I was intimidated because I was young, they looked down at me. But you have the other ridiculous issues that they will hold against you, whether they admit to it or not. It's got to be tough.
It is tough, but you try not to let that stop you from doing stuff, because then it's like if you go to the interview and you try, you might get it, you might not. But if you don't, then you're definitely not going to get it. So I think it just kind of gives us an extra strength as far as Black women, because you have those obstacles, but you can't just give up and let it go. You have to do it. And so you just have to like push through it. So that's when you see, I do worry about like Letitia James, and I worry about all of them. But I know that if anybody is strong enough to do it, like Bonnie Willis, I know she's strong enough to handle it. Alvin Bragg, I know he's strong enough to handle it. And you build up for that because you have to go through that your whole life. So when you get there, it's the same thing. It's just on a national stage now.
I think when I was talking to Ed, I like Fonnie Willis a lot. I like the way she does things.
Mm.
And I told Ed, I said, if I was in a dark alley some night and at one end of the alley was Jack Smith and the other end was Fonnie Willis, I'd run so fast at Jack Smith. I'm not going to fuck with Fonnie Willis.
I would
She
too.
she's a
I
badass
would too.
woman.
She is. And I know that like Fox, they make it seem like because her father was a Black Panther. However, he was an attorney
Yeah,
and he did a lot of work for the community. And she was like writing briefs and she was in his office when she was like 14 years old, you know? So I think that they leave that part out of the story. They said, oh, her father was a Black Panther. And so it makes it look bad, but it's
right,
not bad. When you take this Black man who took this Black girl 14 years old. She's in the law office. She's writing briefs. She's going to college. She's educated. They leave that part out. And it just, they want to make her fit their narrative. So
right.
I think the fact that she's quiet, she's not talking back, she's just behind the scenes doing what she has to do, I think that gets under their skin more than anything. I think that Trump, Fox, all of them, they would love for her to come out and make a statement so they can kind of twist her words, but she's not giving them anything to use towards her. They're just making up stuff and trying to see what sticks. And I think that is driving them crazy. If she talked back, if she fought back in public the way they want her to, that would give them ammo. And she's denying them the opportunity to do that. And
She's a
that is
very
driving them crazy.
she's a very smart woman, and white people have a way of doing things. I've told this story before, but when I was a little boy in the '60s, Martin Luther King, prior to his assassination, um, my mom was telling me about him and stuff, and it was good information. But I was at a friend's house one time, and this guy was from Iowa. He was evangelical, and he was just a weirdo anyway. And he was telling me and my friend, which is his son, saying that Martin Luther King's bad because he's a criminal. He was in jail. And as a 7, 8-year-old kid, he was in jail. Yeah, that's bad. But what he didn't tell us is he was in jail for civil obedience about being treated fucking badly.
Right.
So they tell you half the story so that you have a certain perception of whoever it is they're trying to diminish, and they're trying to do it to Fonnie Willis. And I got to be honest with you, I don't know as much about Letitia James, but she doesn't seem to be any easier than Fonnie Willis. She's,
No,
I mean,
she's ready.
well, let me see what you think about this. I personally think that this upcoming trial, um, in New York, a civil trial, the lawsuit against Donald Trump, I think this may be one of the most devastating trials to Donald Trump. It's not criminal. He won't go into jail,
Mhm.
but she's suing him for what? $250 million minimum. It's going to be more than that probably. And she's suing him for business fraud. And if you're worried about whether she's going to win or not, just remember that in the Manhattan district, his company was convicted of 17 cases of fraud that are the same things he's being confronted with now. So he's going to lose this. But what's interesting is he's minimum they're going to get him for $250 million. If he can't pay it, and I don't think he can because it doesn't sound he's having a little cash flow problem at this point. Those MAGA those mugshot hats aren't going as strong as he'd hoped. But if he can't pay that money, then they can take his property and put it in receivership or any number of different things. And ultimately, he won't be able to collect uh, uh, rent for his properties like the Trump Tower and stuff. And then he can't pay for his loans. And then they'll just take all this shit away. I mean, he could theoretically have every bit of money taken away, every bit of property taken away, and then still not be able to do business in New York at all.
Right.
While it's not as bad as prison, for somebody like Donald Trump, who's all about image, that might
Hmm.
be quite devastating to him. I don't know how he's going to handle that.
Trump is an illusion. and he knows he's an illusion. He can look at his bank accounts like anybody can. I think that Trump, he wants to be the magician and he doesn't want anybody to know the secrets.
Right.
And the thing to him is, we know his secrets, we know who he is, but his base, MAGA, they don't know this yet. And so he doesn't want them to see the secret. He doesn't want them to know the emperor doesn't have any clothes on.
Right.
I don't think he's worried about us knowing because we already know. I think he's worried about that base. And he knows his base better than anybody. And he has to be strong. He has to be the alpha. He has to have the money. And that's who he doesn't want to find out. And so
Right.
when you see him on social media, he is like manic. When he's making 41, 42 videos in 24 hours, he's manic. He's panicking. And it's not us. He's panicking that they are going to find out. And he knows how disturbing and how disgusting and how non-loyal they are because he trained them to be that way. And so as soon as they see who he is, they'll just move on to the next straw man. They'll turn their back on him really, really quickly. And so I think that's what is scaring him the most is his base finding out the truth or his base waking up to the truth. I think a lot of them know it. They still are living in denial, but at
Yeah.
some point you can't deny it. And that's what scares him more than anything, I think,
Well, I've said
is
about
the base.
Donnie after he did those 42 videos, I said, I
Mm,
could save him, I could help him make some money. If he's doing 42 videos a day, he's doing more than I am. He
mm.
needs to get on TikTok and the creator fund, at least put something in his pocket. He's
I
just,
got a question. Who do you think is doing the recording the videos for him? Like, is he? I mean, because he can order a Diet Coke on demand. Like, hey, bring me a Diet Coke.
yeah,
Does he
yeah.
have like a camera guy? Like, hey, come record me. Like,
Oh, I'm sure he does. Or, one of his lawyers who do anything he tells them to do is running the video. Yeah, he's got somebody running the video for him, and he looks so stiff, and as you said, he looks kind of manic. You can see now that his
mm-hmm,
personality has changed and the way he's delivering
yeah,
messages has changed. Um, he's got he's got a lot on his mind, and his protection, his cover is always acting like the tough guy and that I'm still winning, and it's just a joke. I mean, people like you and me can recognize it's bullshit and he's dying on the vine, but like you say, his base will believe it. The problem with the base is it's not enough to win an election. So he might be able to keep his 30%
right.
in his pocket, but it ain't going to do him any good. He needs the independents. He needs
Yeah,
some Republicans.
but he's not going for that though. I think that when you see the videos, he can't keep a thought in his head.
No.
There's like so much going through at one time. And I think that he sees the writing on the wall. He knows it. I think that and then some of the language that they're using right now is they're trying to provoke something. I don't know. I keep thinking of Timothy McVeigh for some reason, but
Yeah.
even Tucker Carlson, when he's asking him, "Oh, so they're going to kill you now?" He's
Yeah.
talking about it. Other people they keep saying, "Oh, so they're trying to make people think that we're coming after Trump, so now you have to do something." He
Yeah.
sees that when he goes to court, they're not showing up other than the goons, but they're nothing serious. He sees that that's not making them be violent, so now he's trying to make it seem like he's in danger, so you have to be violent to protect me. And I think that's a lot of the rhetoric that he's saying. And he's just trying not to say it so blatant to where you can point to it. He talks like a mob boss in little super little codes.
Yeah. He talks like a mob boss and he just throws little inferences out there and presumes that the people who follow him know what he's talking about. But I think you're right. I mean, I think what we're seeing out of Donald Trump right now is desperation
Yeah.
because he can't fight the facts. He can't fight the law. He knows he's going to lose. In his mind, his only hope is to win the presidency and pardon himself. And he has no shot at that. There is no path for him to win the presidency under any circumstances. So, so this guy's got a hope and a dream, and it ain't going anywhere. He's clearly nervous, and he does want to incite people. But are you surprised that people aren't taking the bait? Are you surprised that nobody's showing up at the indictments or anything and getting violent? I know a lot of people thought there would be, and I didn't think so.
They're cowards.
Yeah, they are.
When they saw January 6th and they saw all these people getting rounded up and thrown into jail, I don't personally, if I would just for goodness sake, if I was there January 6th for some reason, and Donald Trump was still in office for how many more days, he could have pardoned all of those people then, but he didn't, which means he's a coward. He didn't want to go against the establishment itself. So naturally, his base, they're cowards. They saw that happen. I'm always worried about that one lone person that's triggered.
Right.
I'm not worried like about a big group or a big protest. They don't organize that well. Even on January 6th, they had every opportunity. The military wasn't there. Congress was retreating. They had took over the Capitol, and they did
They still
nothing but go
failed.
to jail. Yeah,
They
so
still failed.
these are not the brightest people.
Yeah.
So I don't worry about them organizing and doing that type of stuff. I think January 6th was as good as it's going to get for them. I just worry about those lone people that's in the basement. They're by themselves. They're feeling alone and depressed, and they're scared because, I mean, that's what the right wing is doing. They're just scaring the crap out of people. And
Right.
so I think it's just those individual people who I'm worried about. And we've seen it 4 times already. So this year, so
Well, and I
that's who
think
scares me the most.
the organizing of what happened on January 6th and leading up to January 6th, we found out it was more vast than we ever imagined. It wasn't just a bunch of crazy guys attacking the Capitol. It was the
Mm-hmm.
fake electors. It was the intimidation of the secretaries of state and all this stuff, and going after the legislators and such. Um, it there was a lot to it, and it's now starting to be exposed that Donald Trump was really at the head. He was the
Mm-hmm.
head of the monster, and I think that's getting him very nervous. I think the insurrectionists. We've got a couple of problems for the insurrectionists. First of all, a lot of the violent ones are already in fucking jail. So
Yep.
you got the guys that
Along
look.
along
Yeah,
with the ones with a half a brain,
yeah,
because like the Proud Boy leaders and stuff, they're in there too. They
right.
wasn't getting their hands too dirty. They was puppet mastering behind the scenes. So
Yeah.
what does he have left?
Well, and the other thing too is as far as organizing, they have to organize. And the Proud Boys and the insurrectionists didn't do the organizing. It was sitting members of Congress. It was Ginny Thomas. It was Roger Stone. It was Donald Trump's administration. It took them to organize it to get these dumb fucks to accomplish anything, and they still failed, of course. But right now, those
Right.
people don't want to be in, get their hands in it. They're hoping they get out of the first time around, which they won't. So they don't have the support they once had. They don't have a president in office to protect them. They know what's going to happen if they try it again. So there's no way they're even going to give it a shot. I'm convinced of that. There's no way other
Mhm.
than, like you say, a crazy here and there.
Yeah, I think Trump knows that. I think he's had wake up calls every indictment that he's gone to, because
Mm-hmm.
every night he's like, come and protest, come out. He's telling them to do it. And then when he pulls up and he see guys walking around in Trump suits and big hats, and these are not scary, threatening people, they're clowns. He watches the news just like we do. He watched them get made fun of. So he knows who is supporting him right now. And that's scaring him because he knows that these are kind of idiots. They're not going to
Yeah,
really do anything. So instead of trying to make them protest and come together, he's trying to make them violent. And he's
right.
trying to scare them into doing something for him. That's the part that scares me, is just that one person by themselves. I think that's what we all should be looking out for, is that one person, which is unfortunate.
One of the things that I think is going to be extremely devastating for Donald Trump, too, because with him, it's all about image. We know this
Mm-hmm.
from the beginning, but this Georgia case, um, we don't know
Oh,
what's going to happen with the federal government, federal cases, but in Georgia, we know for a fact that this trial is going to be on TV. Now, Donald Trump didn't go to the arraignment, and people were saying, well, he's busy or he doesn't want to do this. There would be cameras at the arraignment too. And I
right.
think he wanted to avoid the cameras, so that's why he didn't go. But he's not going to be able to avoid them during the trial. Everybody's going to see everything. They're going to see how he reacts, how he's being questioned, or how the people around him are being questioned. And I personally think this is really good because our media has done us a disservice in this country. Part of the reason we're divisive now is because depending on who you are and what news source you watch, you get a different story.
Mm-hmm.
I've
Right.
talked to Trumplefucks and said, what about this, this, and this? And they go, I never heard that. and it was the biggest story of the time. So I think this is going to be the one chance to give Trumpers an opportunity to see what's true, and hopefully it resonates with them. Again, some of these clowns aren't bright enough to grasp anything.
I mean, and that I know like recently he just filed to have his case severed from everyone
Right.
else. And that's just because he knows it's going to be public. He does not want to be sitting on camera with the band of the cracking lady and Rudy Giuliani over here passing gas and all that other stuff he does. He wants to be separate from them. But when you keep that trial together, you're putting him in there with just the regular common criminals. And that's why he doesn't want the cameras in there. And now that he knows the cameras is going to be there, he doesn't want to be seen with these people, which is, I mean, that should tell them something. For whatever reason, they're still riding with him on that. But he's worried about that base seeing who he is.
Right.
That's what he's trying to prevent.
Well, and the thing about it if he severs himself and tries to delay this as long as he can, it actually works against him. If you watch trial after trial after trial and all this stuff is exposed and these people keep getting convicted, it doesn't put him in a good position. So it's not an advantage to him to wait. The second thing is, because this is a RICO case, RICO cases are noted for being large groups of people. To sever all these people out of there is contrary to what the whole fucking point of it is. I mean, Fonnie Willis wants to tell the whole story, and the thing is, with a RICO charge, like if you and I are charged with RICO, and I commit a crime, well, you'll be responsible for that crime too, because you're part of the whole. You know, you're part of the RICO group. It's a conspiracy, and so I have a feeling they aren't going to allow anybody to sever themselves, least of all Donald Trump. I mean, maybe some of the little ones, the ones that aren't quite as important, but Donald Trump is the head of the spear. They're not going to let the main guy sever himself, because the whole point they're doing this is a conspiracy theory thing and RICO charges, and he's the head guy. That's why people will say, well, Donald Trump will plead out or something. With what? Who's he going to plead out to? Who's he going to give up? He's the head guy.
I heard Ed's theory last night on the podcast. I think that it's going to be two groups. I think it's going to be like the judge is going to say, hey, do you want your speedy trial or do you not want your speedy trial? If you want your speedy trial, they're going to go in one group. If you want to prolong it or whatever, you guys will get your date and then you guys will all go together. I think it will be two different groups. I think some of them are trying to sever themselves from Donald Trump too, because they maybe are a little bit lower on the totem pole. But I can't remember what the guy name was, the Eastman,
Yeah, John Eastman.
Letitia James was just looking at for perjury. And I don't even know why he testified. So it's like the stuff that he's saying is contradicting what it is that Trump is saying. So it's like you can't be in that same group and you're battling back and forth and you're all on the same trial. So I see why he wants to do it. It's just not going to work.
Well, you know, we continue watching John Eastman and all these people. I mean, John Eastman would be on the upper level with Donald Trump as far as importance in this RICO case. So he's probably not going to get cut any slack. Sidney Powell's not going to. Giuliani's not going to. I could see them maybe doing one trial with Trump, Giuliani, Powell, Kenneth Chesebro, John Eastman, you know, the big ones, have them all together. And I think, I don't see what you think about this. She said October 23rd for the people that want a speedy trial. That's crazy fast, but it says a lot about Fonnie Willis. She's going, I'm ready. Let's go today. She didn't care. I don't think it'll be October.
Also gives her it gives her a talking point too, though.
Right.
Because now she can say, when Trump's attorneys and everybody else comes along and say, oh, we need more time. Okay, well, they didn't need more time and it's the same case.
Right.
So I think that's going to work against that prolonging an argument. That's what I think.
Well, and Fonnie Willis asked for March originally, which is interesting because it's March 4th up in DC. So March could be a busy month for Donald Trump. So maybe she'll go April or February. But it's, you know, for her to say, okay, the guys who want it quick, we go October, maybe November 1. And the people who need more time, you got March. You're not going to get to the end of next year or all that stuff. We're going to go in March. And I think we're lucky with the attorneys in DC and in Georgia. That guy's young, man. He's 35 years old. I got a kid older than that. You're older than that. He's a kid, but he sounds like he's on top of it and knows what the hell's up. But this spring is going to be a busy fucking time for Donald Trump. He's going to be in and out of courtrooms. He may have already lost all his money by way of Letitia James. It's not going to be a good winter and spring for Donald Trump.
It's not. I'm waiting for, and I don't know how long it's going to take, but I am waiting for the right wing media to turn on him. I can see
Yeah.
some shifts in Fox News, but it's not completely there yet. I'm just waiting because you can only, like, once you know that it's going to be publicized and once you know people are going to see what it is, you cannot continue to hitch yourself to him. Sooner or later, you will have to start telling the truth or half of the truth at least. I'm just waiting for that. It's gonna be crazy when that happens.
Aren't you surprised at how long it's taken, though? I really honestly thought logic would have told me that once Donald Trump lost the presidency and Biden was inaugurated, now Donald Trump's a loser, and
Mhm.
that would have been the proper time to separate from Donald Trump. But for whatever reason, they refuse to do that. They continue to embrace them. And as they embrace them, they're going further down the rabbit hole. They're not doing themselves any good. And these people now that are out now saying, well, yeah, Donald Trump's crazy, too fucking late. You should have done that two
Yeah.
years ago.
My grandmother would say they're gonna squeeze that nickel until the buffalo poops. When MAGA runs out of money, then it'll change. You know, like they're gonna get every last dime out of his supporters that they can. Once that happens, I think then they'll switch.
It
I
sounds
think
like
I think that's what it's gonna take.
Sounds like they're getting close. You heard the story I was telling, how Donald Trump had a PAC with $150 million in, which was a crazy amount of money, and he was collecting more money than anybody. But now in that same PAC, he's got
Mhm.
4 million left. And like I
Yeah, I
said,
think he's a little under 4 million now. Last time I saw, he's
like
at
I
like
s-
3 million or something now.
like I said in the previous podcast to Donald Trump, that's hooker and Adderall money. That's not. He can't do shit with that.
Nah, it's not gonna last long at all, at all. It's not. And then you have to keep in mind too the attorney's fees. The people that are in his inner circle that have the most dirt on him at this moment, he's paying all of their legal fees. It's
Right,
the people that helped him in the past that he really doesn't deal with anymore, like Giuliani and all of those. They're on their own. But the
right,
people in his inner circle that knows, especially that documents case,
right.
he has to pay their legal fees, and that's not inexpensive.
But what happens when
It's
you run out of money? Because it looks like he's running out of money. The whole Republican Party is running out of money. So,
um public defenders, and then they start telling the truth.
well, you
That's
know
all they
what?
can do.
It's funny. You remember that guy in Georgia that was arrested with the 19, and he didn't get bail at first. He
Oh
found
yeah.
he found himself in quite a spot because here he is in the middle of a high level case, and every lawyer he goes to, they want $100,000 retainer, and he doesn't have it. I mean, who does? Um, but then they
Mhm.
said, what about a public attorney? And he said, they told me I make too much money to get a public defender. So what do you do in that case? You can't afford the retainer because the lawyers are gouging these fuckers. And then he makes too much money for a public defender. There's got to be something the courts figure out for him because they're not going to let him just go without being represented.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's when you pick up the phone and you're like, "Hello, Miss Willis, how are you today?" That's what I mean. You just start. I think that a lot of them are still kind of, I don't know, magical thinking. They're delusional.
Yeah.
And I think once the reality starts to sit in a little bit more, they'll be more cooperative. I think I don't know what makes them hold on so strong. I really don't, but They gonna turn. I have
Oh,
no doubt about it. Especially they're complaining online already and having GoFundMe's and stuff. It's only a
yeah.
matter of time for they have to start thinking about themselves.
They're going to have to be getting in the car, driving around, looking at bus benches and watching late night TV. Dial shitty lawyer because we'll represent you. It doesn't matter. Yeah,
They can
yeah,
always donate plasma or something. I don't
yeah.
know.
There you go. There you go. There you go. I used to donate plasma when I was in college, and
Yeah, my daughter and her friends do too.
I did it to buy beer. So I
Oh,
did it for a good cause. It works. Shit, what the hell? I tell you what, old soul, we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
all right, sounds good.
We're back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Old Soul is with me. She is a listener of the show. She sends emails, and now she's on the show. Couldn't be happier to have her on because she's got brings some interesting insight. Um, unlike a lot of people who listen to the podcast, she's not an old baby boomer or an old white man. She's a younger woman of color, and frankly, somebody like you, old soul, is kind of the future of where this country is going. I heard somebody tell me one time that 7,000 baby boomers are dying a day. Now, I don't know what day has been allotted for me, but as soon as I know, I'll let everybody. but you were saying something before we went on, and I'm glad you recognize this and are concerned about it. Whether we're talking about Republicans or Democrats, it seems for a long time, for decades since I've been voting, it's been really tough to get either side to do their job, why they were elected, and to serve the public. And I've said this a lot. Now, the Republicans are nothing but obstructionists, but for a long time, the Democrats didn't do much either. And it was largely due to apathy by we older folks. We just said, whatever, let them handle it and they'll take care of it for us. But they didn't. They took it to us as opposed to taking care of us. And now your eyes are opened, and that's got to give you a different perspective as we go into the future here and as we boomers die off.
Yeah, I can't afford to, and I think about my daughter, future grandchildren, my nieces. I can't afford to vote because that's the way my family voted. I can't afford to, just go along with. And I think a lot of conservatives they do that. Their parents voted Republican, they're voting Republican,
Right.
and Democrats do the same thing. My family voted Democrat, I'm gonna vote a Democrat. But I think we need to start looking at the quality of the candidate because right now we have a Republican governor in the state of Nevada. And I don't agree with everything he does. However, he looks out for us as far as making us a safe haven state, making it safe for girls to come here, putting certain things together to where they're safe if they need to get health care. And you can't say that every single Democrat is one way and every Republican is that way.
No,
It's
you
just
can't.
the people that with the most power right now, those are the people who are abusing it. And they're not from the community. They're not from the people. If you look at Ted Cruz and he's walking around drinking beer with his shirt tucked in and looking like a tough guy, that's not something Ted Cruz does. He has maids at home. His kids go to private schools. He doesn't worry about them getting shot at school. So you need people from the people to be elected to go into Congress and make a difference. So when I see people like Jamal Bryant, Corey, Bush and stuff like that, it's like those are the people who knows what's going on. They've been there, they've struggled, and they want to improve it, not just go in there and enrich themselves. And if we don't get money out of politics, that's what's going to happen.
When I was
That's what's going to happen.
when I was a young man in school, I wasn't a bully or picking on people or whatever, but had I gone to school with Ted Cruz, would have definitely beat the shit out of him. Just just because he's a douchebag. He just is. And
He's so unlikable.
well, yeah, Al Franken, who used to be the senator from Minnesota, he was a comedian on SNL and did a lot of stuff too. But the best quote he's ever had was about Ted Cruz. He says, in Congress, I like Ted Cruz more than everybody in Congress, and I fucking hate Ted Cruz. So, I mean, that's pretty much how everybody feels about it. And I think we boomers have been kind of hoodwinked because they kept telling us, oh, trickle down theory works, or this works, or yeah, we're giving money to the rich, but here's why, and it's a smart idea. We've been dumb enough, a majority of us anyway, been dumb enough to believe that. And now I think younger folks like you are realizing, no, man, that's bullshit. That's a lie.
No, because we know that there's greedy people on the top. And
Right.
then the way that I look at things, the same way my daughter and her friends look at things, is it's not trickle down economics. It's scraps.
Yeah.
We're gonna put the rich people at the table, we're gonna feed them, and whatever's left over, they can just toss it out. Whoever gets it, gets it. It's not gonna be spread evenly. And then when you see, if you take a company like Walmart, one of the biggest companies in the world, and you look at the people who run that company, how much wealth they have, but I think it's something like 75% of their employees are on state assistance
Right. Right.
because they're not paying them a living wage. So why would they pay their employees a living wage when they can enrich themselves? And then you could take your tax money and instead of giving free health care, helping kids go to college, now all of a sudden you have to make sure they can buy food. You have to make sure they can pay their rent. No, that's what their employer is supposed to do. So you
Right.
have to, re-navigate those tax monies to something that's better. But in order to do that, you have to start taking care of these companies. And when you have the companies paying people in Congress, that's just not going to happen. So you have to just elect regular, hardworking people to Congress to make a difference, and you have to get money out of politics.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't understand why we're allowed to do that. That's
Well, again,
beyond me.
because people were apathetic and they said, "Yeah, sure, whatever, whatever," and that's the fault of we older folks, the boomers who just weren't showing up and weren't paying attention, and we just assumed that they were going to do the right things. And I guess when I was younger, I was as guilty as anybody. It wasn't until Donald Trump came in, I go, "Wait a fucking minute." I mean, what they're telling us about trickle down and the money thing and how I can't afford health care and all that stuff, you would think that's so silly that they would think twice before they say something like that. And then they come out and tell us, slavery was really a good thing for Black people, that they learned some skill. Fuck you. I mean, that I can't believe somebody is dumb enough to say that and think people are dumb enough to believe that.
But I think that they have to do it. Sometimes when I'm watching Fox and they're giving a BS line, you can see it on their faces. They're saying that they don't even mean it. And I think that they have to say it because what else can they do? Are they supposed to say, we don't want you to have free health care? We're going to fight against this. We're not going to vote for student loan debt. We don't want any of this stuff. And then the
Yeah.
audience say, okay, so what do you want? So they have to keep you scared. Number one, like they have to keep you scared.
Right.
And then they have to keep you distracted because
Right.
there's no conservative policies to help anybody. It's just taking away rights, demonizing this person, making it harder. That's their whole platform. And they don't want their audience to know that because most people in blue states and some purple states like mine, we're not struggling. It's the rural areas and conservative states.
Right.
And then I think that's where their pastors come into it because now they're in church and they're scaring the heck out of these people. And they're thinking there's all these bad demons going around. We're going to make your kids transgender and all this weird stuff. And they are just scaring a lot of these people. But I think when they stop being scared and start paying attention, that's when the change is going to come. And conservatives, they know that. They
Well,
know that. Their
I,
base doesn't know it, but they know it.
I'm curious as to where a young woman like you turns to. I mean, I have a problem with all media, both left and right. Not as much with left as I do the right, but the left has its issues too because it doesn't always tell you the whole story and they're trying to scare you and suck you into watching more. Where would you go to get your information? I mean, I go to a bunch of different places and then I try to distill it down to what's the truth. And it's not that easy to come up with. I mean, it takes some work to do it. Somebody like yourself, you got a busy life. You work. I mean, I'm just an old retired guy sitting in my living room. I got time, but somebody like you doesn't have the time. So how do you discern that? How do you come up with the facts that you need to know?
I read.
Good.
It is
Good.
crazy as it is. I do. Like I'll read. If I hear something, I'll like jot it down. And luckily I can work from home. And so when I'm slow, there's nothing going on, then I can just kind of read and you can fact check yourself. You know what I mean? So there's a lot of different places where you can go and say, hmm, did Donald Trump really cut taxes for everybody else? And then when you go and look and you be like, oh, but that tax break runs out. You know what I
Right.
mean? So you really do have to pay attention. You have to read. And then I watch a lot of local news. So instead of watching on CNN what's happening in Florida, I'll go and watch a Florida news station
Oh,
and I'll
good
see
idea.
what's going on. You know what I mean? So instead of listening to somebody tell me what's going on in the state, I'm actually watching it from their news, you know. So I'll just go to any state, watch their news channel, see what's going on, and then I can always just fact check it and stuff like that. Even like now they're saying Trump is telling people that the January 6th information was destroyed or whatever he's saying. You can see that information online. You can just go read it. And
Right.
I think he knows he can say that because they don't read. And I think for me, knowledge is power. So I need to read it. I need to stay informed. I need to pay attention. But you have to actively do that. Because if you just listen to what someone's telling you could be getting one side, you could be getting the wrong information. I don't really trust media like that. But I really do just go to different states and see what they got going on.
Well, and you really
Read their
have
stats and their statistics. You
you,
have to read it.
you can't just go with the headlines either. That for all intents and purposes, a lot of places is clickbait. I saw something on TikTok
Yeah.
recently. Wall Street Journal came out with some story about gas and talking about how gas is going to be $300 a barrel, which is crazy to even imagine. But then when you read the article, it said nothing about that. It didn't say it
Hmm.
was going to be $300 a gallon. They just put that in the headline. And there's a guy on TikTok. His name is Mr. Global, and he knows a lot about the energy industry. He works in the energy industry, and he called them out on TikTok, and he's got a pretty big following. Next day, online, they changed that title or that
Mm.
headline because it was ridiculous. But that's the problem. People are lazy. They see the
Hmm.
headline, they go, "That's all I need to know. I saw the
Yep.
headline, $300 a barrel. We're fucked." And
Yeah,
and
and they're smart. They put the information in the middle of the article. So the
right.
first two paragraphs is nothing, but you have to wait till you get mid-article to start getting facts and the real story. And they, like you said, people are lazy. They're not going to read the whole article, maybe the title, the first paragraph or so, and then they're done. You have to read the whole thing from top to bottom.
Well, that's part of the reasons why I did what I did with the rational boomer stuff on TikTok is that I know people don't do that and people are freaking out. They still freak out even after I tell them what it really means. They freak out. They didn't hear it. They forget whatever. And I like to just boil it down to the specific terms that are truly important as opposed to the ones that are just to make you afraid. I mean, we're constantly hearing right now, and this is irritating me to no end, how the polls tell us if Donald Trump and Joe Biden were in the general election, they'd be neck and neck. That's absolute bullshit. I don't care
It is.
what any poll says. There's no way logically that could be.
I think people are thrown off because Trump threw off the whole like election time frame that we're usually on. He
Right,
announced super early
right.
because he knew these indictments were coming. And a lot of like normal regular people there, I don't even think they're paying attention right now. I have
No.
friends when I talk to them, they're like, that's going on. I think as it comes more towards election season, especially when the trials start happening, people will start to pay attention, they'll start to engage more, and I think those polls will shift. And then also there are certain polls, I think Reuters is one of them, that are still polling using landlines. Not too many people use landlines anymore, so that's going to be
Old white
a
people
huge
use
poll.
landlines. Old rural white people. Big surprise. Donald Trump is popular among them. I mean, I'm an old white guy. I
Yeah,
don't
and
have a
I think
landline.
yeah, so when you see, I think when it comes to certain polls, you have to see where they get their data from. Are
Right.
they, because some polls that you'll get a text message and you answer like a couple questions on a text message. I think that's more accurate than a landline poll, that type of stuff. I think they're skewed just based on where they get their information from. And a lot of them are biased anyway. So
Well,
I
yeah,
think we have to just kind of let people pay attention and then start to see where the country's at.
you got to kind of get to know who is behind each of the polls, who's financing the polls, because we see so many different polls, and they're calling 1,000 people. We got 300 million people in this country, and you're going to call 1,000 people, and that's going to tell us how this is going to break out, and you're calling the wrong people. Yeah, I don't take polls too much to heart. As I've said many times, Trump lost by 7 million votes in 2020 and has done absolutely nothing to improve his standing. In fact, he's made it worse. There's no way he can win in 2024. It's just not possible.
Right. And you do have some conservatives who will vote for Joe Biden, but they're not going to tell a pollster that. They're not going
True.
to tell their family or their friends that. You know what I mean? So I think that's throwing it off a little bit too, because there are people who are, I call them like secret votes. They make it seem like they're going to vote one way, and then
Yeah.
they vote another way. And I think we're going to see more of that during this election, because I do think there's people out there who's just like, in church saying one thing, doing something, and then outside of church they're doing something else. Which, I mean, I do that too, but not when it comes to
Right. Well, you brought this up early on. You were talking about uh, pro-choice and abortion and all of that, and what you were talking about is giving women who are in red states a hand, and that's admirable for you to do it. But I think that I think if you threw away everything else, the indictments, the investigations, the trials, if none of that existed, just by virtue of overturning Roe v. Wade and these states embracing this anti-abortion stuff, that's enough for them to lose the election.
that's that's enough, and a lot of the overt racism is enough. I've I think the last time I read an article about this was in 2022. It was last year, and it was in the Toronto. I could be wrong, but there was an article about white nationalists because they believe in that great replacement theory. So they
Yeah,
were like assaulting women and young girls because they wanted to make sure that they were pregnant with white babies. And when you're starting to see some of this type of stuff, the girl that I was talking about earlier started the seventh grade as a mother because that happened to her in her backyard.
right.
And when it's stuff like that and the news isn't talking about it, it's not, it's like it's more than that. It's like an all out assault and attack on women in general. And I
Yeah.
think Roe v. Wade in itself making us vulnerable to those type of attacks, being unable to choose our own path, which way we want to go. I think that is more than enough to be like, oh, y'all tripping. And I
Well,
think that Biden should definitely run with that narrative in his campaign.
absolutely. It's funny when they overturned Roe v. Wade before the 2022 election. I honestly think some Republicans thought, well, it'll be rough at first, but women will let it go, and we'll be fine in 2022, or if not 2022, at least they'll forget about it by 2024. And all I got to say is, have you ever been with a woman? I mean, shit.
That ain't happening. We know.
Eh, Anytime I get in a fight with my
We know
wife,
that it's not happening.
every time I get in a fight with my wife, I gotta deal with every sin I committed from the 80s to now. If I'm winning any kind of
Hmm.
argument, okay, remember in 86 when you fucked up? Yeah. And then yeah, women aren't going to forget about it. You take away a woman's constitutional rights and you think you're gonna smooth that over? No. But that's the thing that I don't. Are they
It,
so dumb they keep embracing it even though they know it's a loser?
no, it makes us so vulnerable, and I think that's the part that they don't get. If you have a woman who's in an abusive relationship or she's been assaulted, that type of thing, it makes us vulnerable because now we can't choose. Somebody else has made that choice for us. And I think they underestimated the effects that we would feel from that. But not only that, I think Trump gave them permission to believe their own hype, because
Yeah.
I really do think that old school Republicans, they talk bad about immigrants, they said all of this stuff, but they never did anything about it. So
Right.
it kept their base angry and upset, and it kept them voting for them. But when they started actually enacting those laws and put it into place, then they were like, oh, wait a minute, maybe that was a bad idea. So they were
Exactly.
fine as long as they was talking about it and keeping everybody riled up. But the moment they started putting those laws into place and letting people actually feel what it felt like when they enacted those laws, it became a whole different story. So they should have just kept talking and running their mouth and not really do anything about it.
Right.
Because now that they have, we can see that Florida knows, I think America knows now what it's like without immigrants to do labor. But not only that, but now the immigrants know how important they are. They know that they're valued. So it's like, oh, you can't just pay me $4 anymore. You need to pay me this or that, because
Right.
without me, these cops are gonna, it did the opposite of what they wanted it to do.
Well,
Because now immigrants, they're like they can bargain more for wages.
isn't it amazing how Republicans, with Roe v. Wade, you're right about that. I mean, for 50 years, they've been running on that. They've been
Mm-hmm.
campaigning on it. They've been fundraising on it. And then they finally got it and they became the dog who caught the car. Oh,
Yep.
fuck. Now what do we do? Not only don't we know what to do with it, we can't campaign on it. We can't fundraise on it anymore. And it's fucked us over because nobody likes it. And that's
Right.
the thing is, you would think you're dealing with intelligent people, but they're so adverse to admitting they're wrong. They just
Yeah.
double down and they triple down and they quadruple down. And they're going to keep doing that until they fall off the cliff and they're completely destroyed. Because I think that's what's going to happen to the Republican Party. After 2024, they're going to take such a bad whooping that they're going to say, well, I guess we fucked up. So we better
Yeah.
try something different. Yeah, you should have
Yeah.
done that 2 years ago.
Yeah. They showed themselves for who they were, because
Yeah.
they didn't even care enough about women and girls to have a plan in place. If you've been trying for 50 years to get this law passed, it never dawned on anybody, okay, so what happens once we get the law passed and there's
Yeah.
a girl or there's a woman who's sick? And they didn't think about any of that. They thought women
Right.
were just going to roll over and take it. I don't get that part. They didn't plan ahead. They didn't think about it. It's just like and then they showed that they were complete liars. It was a
Right.
state issue. And now it's like, oh, we don't want you to cross state lines now, or
Right.
now we want an abortion ban, or now we don't want abortion medication or an abortion pill available. It wasn't enough. And it's crazy because it was like people like you who were like, if you think they're going to stop at that, they're going to keep on going.
Yeah.
And
No
everybody's
shit.
like, oh, the left, they're being hyperbolic, they're so sensitive. And the first thing they did was like, okay, now we need to do it on a national level. So they really showed who they were. And they could have just kept raising money and talking crap about it. They didn't have to put it into place. But now that they have, it's like no, I think like the old school Republicans, they never sat down and said, hey, Ron DeSantis, you're only supposed to talk about it. You're not supposed to do it. Like nobody told him the secret and he just started doing it. It was like
Right.
it's so out of touch from what most people care about.
And I think out of touch is the exact word you need because, because I'm an old white guy, I grew up in the 60s. Now you're going to be appalled to hear this, but in the 60s, women were second class citizens. They couldn't get a credit card. They couldn't get a car loan. They couldn't get a house loan. They were expected to be home, cooking, putting the kids to bed, and all that stuff. They had virtually no rights. And in the 60s, along with civil rights, we had women's rights happening too. Um, so I wonder sometimes if all these old white guys are just thinking we're still in the 60s because I got to tell you, all those things I just said about women, what they were put through back in the 60s, I look at you and I'm thinking, she ain't fucking having that. She ain't gonna put up with that shit.
No, I have aunts and my grandmother. Like I was raised around older women, and I used to hear stories about back alley abortions. And when I was like younger, I'm like, what is that? But when I got older, they were like, no, you would just go to somebody's garage or you would go to their
Right,
hotel room. And then a lot of time women would become sterile. They would die. They would have infections. It would, all this awful, awful stuff would happen. But it's like they were so desperate that they had to do that. And I
right,
think a lot of women are looking like, I don't like, for me, I don't want my daughter to live in a world where she feels like she has to do that. I don't want, one woman in one state has a set of rights and the other states don't, because that takes us back to free states and non-free states. Like we don't really have to do that, especially with women and girls. I don't think maybe they just didn't sit down and talk to their wives and their daughters and ask them before they did this, or maybe they all just live in one big bubble and they don't listen to other people or other people's ideas. They're just listening to people who agree with them,
Well,
and that's not healthy.
I personally think that one of the biggest problems we have in politics today is religion.
Oh yeah.
I believe in God and all that stuff. I just don't believe in churches because I haven't met one
Mhm.
yet that I feel confident with. That's just me. But the evangelicals represented enough votes and enough money where they just went along with whatever the evangelicals decided, and they've shown who they are too. They don't care what their people do, what sins they commit, as long as they get them that one thing, and that's overturning Roe v. Wade. And that's a pretty despicable thing. And as much as we got to get money out of politics, we got to get religion out of politics too. I mean, and I'm not saying you
Yeah,
can't be
absolutely.
religious, but we can't have religious zealots dictating how this country's run because that's not what it's based on.
Right. I was watching, I think there's like a guy named Greg Locke. There
Yeah,
was another one, her name was like Cat something with the pink hair.
yeah,
And I couldn't watch it for that long because it was like so sick and so disgusting. These are pastors. They're not feeding the minds and the souls of their congregation. They're scaring them and they're feeding them propaganda.
right,
And it's so sad because you're taking advantage of people when they're vulnerable. They go to church for like spiritual guidance, healing, counseling. They're very vulnerable when they're there, and you're taking advantage of that. And not only are you taking advantage of it, but you're getting tax exempt status for it. You're
right.
getting an extra private jet for it. And it's like when they teamed up with, I can see them teaming up. I can see them doing it with Mike Pence. But when they teamed up with Trump, it really did show that the morals that they say they have, the standards that they say they have, is complete BS. They don't mean any of it. He cheated
Well,
on every wife he had. He multiple different wives. It's like this is the Antichrist, and you're
right,
telling your people follow him, and not only follow him, but follow him off a cliff, and because that's exactly where he's going.
yeah,
It is. I don't understand how they can make a whole sermon talking about Donald Trump and get tax exempt status. That makes zero sense to me at all. I,
absolutely.
I don't get that.
Now, I've said this before. See what you think about this, especially somebody who's in your position, having been in an abusive relationship. Um, I feel like this country, after going through what we've gone through for the last 6 years, and with Donald Trump as president and the Republicans in whatever power they had at any given time, I feel like every one of us in this country has been like an abused child at some point. Because, I'm not the kind of guy that worries or has anxiety or things, but a lot of people do. And when I get
Mm-hmm.
people commenting to me or asking me questions, they're asking me questions and they're scared to death about things they don't need to be scared to
Yeah.
death about, but they are. And it's almost like we're a country of abused kids.
Yeah, I don't know, like if you were ever like in my relationship, like I would get like that certain look, or he would move a certain way, and I would know, like I know where his
Right,
mindset is.
right,
And I think we were so used to like every day you wake up, you open your phone, and you had no idea what Donald Trump was doing. You
right,
couldn't predict his next behavior. So it's not like you're walking around on eggshells, like you're trying to avoid landmines. You don't know if we're going to go to war. You don't know who he's going to piss off. You don't know if he's going to pull us out of NATO. Like it was every single day. It was something different. And he traumatized an entire country. But not only that, you started seeing like the president of the US is like an example for the nation. So when you
yeah,
see Americans like they don't want to wear their mask, now all of a sudden people in Australia don't want to wear a mask, people in Canada don't want to wear their mask. It was such a ripple effect, and
right.
there was no safe space with this guy. And I have a story I don't really tell too many people, and I won't mention any names, but
Well, nobody's
I have a
listening. Go
friend.
ahead.
I have a friend, and her son passed away when he was 6 from COVID. It just kind of wreaked havoc on his organs. And if you ever know someone who loses a child, you don't want to leave them alone. So we're at the house and it's quiet, everyone's sad. And I can't remember who it was that picked up the remote and turned on the television. And it was Donald Trump telling everybody, open up your schools are safe, your children are safe. And we have a child in the morgue from COVID.
Right.
And it was like we were traumatized. And you have to think about how many other parents went through that, how many grandparents we saw pass away. And we keep watching like day after day. It's like abuse after abuse after abuse. And everybody, I think we really did think, okay, when Biden gets in there, oh, we can all breathe. But he kept going and going and going
Right.
and going. And it's like you just beat somebody down so long and they're just like, okay, I can't do this anymore. And I think he did that to an entire country. There were other people who kind of like fell in line, like his supporters, they're just going to go along with it. You have other people who tried to fight back and it didn't go well for them. And you have other people who was just kind of like quiet and were just waiting for 2024, waiting for the trials and trying to see what happens. We are traumatized,
Right.
very, very traumatized.
Well, you said something there just a second ago, and I can kind of relate to it. Uh, I know for me, when with my father, he was somebody who would go off the rails and get upset and scream and yell and say horrible things. And when you're a little kid, it scares you. Not unlike
Mm-hmm.
your situation with your uh, abusive relationship. And it sounds like you were saying exactly what I learned too. At that point, when you're in a situation like that, you learn different tactics, and it's all about survival. I learned
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
would watch him. I could watch his face, his expressions, his movements, what he was saying, where he was going, and then I would try to manipulate him to get him off track to something else, knowing I could say something to make him laugh or make him happy again. And it was very difficult to learn that. Now I find myself kind of reading everybody I talk to. It's like second nature to me. But with Donald Trump and the government, we didn't have that mode of protection. It was just everything was
Right.
fucking flying and we couldn't control shit.
Right. I think like for me in my relationship, I was like watching for cues. And one of his cues was his nose would kind of like get flared up. And so
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, he's supposed to be like upset. And I would always try to like get my daughter in her room, playing with her toys. Like I could look at him and I can kind of read the room. So then you know how to act accordingly. You do
Right.
everything you can not to piss this person off. But when it comes to somebody like Donald Trump and the government, there's nothing you can do. You can't not piss this person off. If he's going to be mad, he's going to be mad. When he gets up there at that podium, you don't know what's going to come out of his mouth. You don't know what he's going to say. You don't know what ripple effect it's going to have.
Right.
And so I think that's what traumatized most people because you can't adapt when you don't know when he's so unpredictable. And I've never seen anybody so abusive when I look at Donald Trump because you never know. Even when I see his videos from video to video, he's a different person. He's all over the place. So you can't adapt to somebody who's unadaptable. He's just
Right.
all over the place. And I think about the people behind the camera that work for him. That's I don't know how they do it because I wouldn't have been able to do it. And I could just imagine the abuse, especially with him being stressed out, when you can't predict what he's going to do from one moment to the next. I don't know how they do that. He's unhinged.
If you ever run into a situation like that when you're in that kind of relationship, I'm guessing you would handle it totally different and get the fuck out of there. But I'll give you a tip on what to do because my wife did it to me. Now, I'm not abusive. I don't get angry. I don't yell and scream or anything, but I've had occasion to piss her off. And she just had to
Name a
say,
guy who hasn't.
right, right. I mean, that's kind of our job, but she had five little words that got me to sit up and think and straighten out a little bit. And the five words were, you got to sleep sometime. And I realized, yeah, I fucking do. So I'm gonna chill out here. But yeah, the thing with Trump is that the way he treated this country is probably the way he treated his family. You
Yeah.
know, it's all
Mm-hmm.
about him. It's all about his own benefits, his own enrichment. And he really doesn't have the capacity. He's truly a sociopath because he has no sympathy or empathy for anybody else. And it's all about him. Now people used to try to tell us, well, he's playing 3D chess and we're playing checkers. And the fact of the matter is that's not what I ever got from him. There doesn't seem to be any intelligence there. It's just reaction. You know, if you called me a name and I said, well, you're a poopy butt, it's kind of along the same lines, you know? It's just pulling something out of the air and saying it, and it really has no bearing. And I think my point is proven that every time he does that, he implicates himself in another crime. He's not
The
thinking at all.
the strength and the power of Trump is a myth because he could not have done any of this if he did not have help, if he didn't have Bill Barr covering his butt,
Right.
if he didn't have a bunch of cowards in the Senate, he could have been impeached within months of his presidency. Even like now, the narrative, like he wouldn't, you have Jim Jordan and different people trying to come up with creative ways to save him. Trump isn't doing any of this stuff. The only thing he's just whining and crying, asking them, well, pretty much begging them for help. He cannot do any of this without his enablers. So it's not Trump that's he's bad, but it's the enablers who is allowing for it to continue. He couldn't do any. I wish people would stop thinking he's such a strong man because he's not. He whines, he cries. You made a whole video about him complaining about how he looks on a picture. You
Right.
know, like
Right.
I don't know any like strong men that care what they look like in a picture. It's just he's so weak, thin skinned, he's so fragile, he's so vulnerable, he can't control his emotions, he can't articulate how he's feeling in any type of rational way. And I don't know if you've seen his interviews, but he hopped from one subject to the next. He's like
Right.
bouncing all over the place. He cannot do any of this without his enablers. So
No.
that hype that he's such a strong guy, he is not at all. And I really do wish people would see through that. That persona is not true.
I think most people of average intelligence can see through it, but I think something else to consider about when you see him ranting and raving that will kind of bring it down to a better understanding is that while he's ranting and raving, he's also shitting his pants at that time. It's hard to take somebody, give anybody credit if we know he shit his pants. It's just, I mean, if you were dating a guy and he shit his pants, would you date him again? No, you wouldn't.
I did see an interview with one of the producers who did the the stupid show he had, and he was
Apprentice.
talking, The Apprentice. He was talking about how they would be like talking to him, telling him what to do next, and you would like hear him grunt, and then you would kind of like smell it. I was like, what?
Wow.
Yeah, he was saying like even back then he was kind of like a joke. Even the building, the show actually stepped in and fixed the building because it was like dilapidated by the time Trump took over it. But it I'm never gonna see one of his videos the same since you said that.
Well, I mean, you know how they say, well, if you're nervous about talking in front of a crowd, just imagine them naked, just to make you feel better. That's all you have to do is say, even if he says the smartest thing, he's got a diaper on. I mean,
Because he is straining when he talks and he's doing all
yeah,
this stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Oh,
It's frightening to think. I mean, did you run into Trump fucks now that I mean, I get people who confront me from time to time because they know what I talk about and they can't help themselves. They got to try me. And if I'm out someplace and I'm at a party or whatever, I'm not talking about politics. I talk about it all day. I don't need to talk about it with anybody. And I know I can't convince any Trumper about anything, but inevitably they will come up to me and they will say some shit. Um, do you get that at all as a younger woman who actually
mm,
has an intellect?
not so much in public. There's only been like a couple of incidents. Like I work in healthcare, and I had a woman. She told me one time, "Oh yeah, that's because all the illegals they get all their medication paid for," and I was like, "You do know they don't have social security numbers, and you have to have that in order to get government
Right.
assistance. Like they're not the ones draining the resource." but I get comments like that, and it's not like they're a Trumper, but you could just tell that they've been told something so much that they believe it. You can never tell them that illegal immigrants are not draining the welfare system instead of saying, oh no, that goes to Kentucky. You can't really say that, but I get stuff like that, but I don't really get Trumpers out here. I've seen their signs a couple of times. I know he had a recent event here not that long ago. I know that the Don Jr., he had like a little event out here a weekend before last with it was pretty bad. They were talking about killing people and stuff at the convention center. But they pretty much they come in, they do their little thing and they leave. And the people leave with them because they come from like Utah and other places, but it's not really like local people,
Was it
which is
was it
weird because
was it tough for you when Don Jr. was in town looking at that guy and knowing, God damn it, he's taken.
I don't know what that guy is smoking, but he need like as much as they talk about Hunter Biden, when
Yeah.
you see him, his eyes are always like glossed over and he's on something. He's him and his girlfriend, both of them, they're not okay.
Well,
They're not okay.
the thing about it is you've seen his girlfriend, right? Um, uh, Kimberly
Kimberly
Guilfoyle.
Guilford.
I have to
Yeah.
cut Don Jr. some slack because if I'm dating that woman, I'm going to need to be on something. Something.
If if I ever meet Gavin Newsom, I'm gonna ask him, what were you thinking? I'm assuming that she was different when he was with her, but man, I don't know. I could never see her with somebody like that. I couldn't see it, but I could see her with Ed Jr. I could see them in a hotel room for days.
Doing whatever, doing coke and whatever. But yeah, you're right about Gavin Newsom. Now he seems like a prospect
Yeah.
for the presidency in 2028, but we're going to have to
Yeah.
hash that one out. That makes me question his judgment a little.
Yeah, yeah. I think for me, people they don't agree with me on this, but I think for right now, I think that Biden is the best candidate. And a way that the reason I think that is because you do have some never Trumpers or you have those Lincoln Project types of Republicans. If you have somebody progressive that's on
Right.
the ticket, they probably wouldn't feel comfortable going with that. But when you
Right.
have somebody who is like kind of centrist like Biden, that'll make them feel a little bit more comfortable. But then when you look at younger people, people of my generation, and we can see his progressive policies, even if he's not getting it done, and I think a lot of times Biden is doing stuff that he knows isn't going to go through, but he puts it out there to show us that, hey, I'm trying. This is what I'm doing. Like, even though he got blocked on the student debt relief, he still relieved debt for so many people.
Right.
So he
Right.
is getting the young people with his progressive ideas. And the people who would not vote for a progressive or a more to the left Democrat, I think they feel more comfortable voting for Biden. So I
Well,
think Gavin Newsom, I just don't think it's his time just because
no.
I just think they would just do a better job of making him not seem so feeble. And I think it's because he was like a runner, always exercising on his bike and stuff.
Right.
And I think it's not he's slow. I just think this man wore his knees out for 80 years.
Yeah. Well, he's 82. He's 80, 82. And the thing about it is I think he's too old. I wasn't really sure if he would run in 80 or 24. But the fact of the matter is he is the incumbent, which is a plus when you're running an election. He's got a pretty good track record. He did a lot of shit. He's not as progressive as maybe you and I would hope he would be, and maybe that helps him in the election. The fact that he's more centrist, that might get some more independents and even Republicans voting for him. But I don't see any viable option to run anybody else but Joe Biden unless he keels over before 2024. You really can't do
Yeah, I
much.
don't think so either. Yeah, he has a really good record. And even the things that he has tried to do, even when Republicans block him, I'm not sure who he has doing his social media page, but they're doing a pretty good job of calling it out. Even when he speaks like, oh, you don't want to release student debt, but Marjorie Taylor Greene over here, she got
Right.
her PPP loan forgiven. And this person, like he's calling it out in a subtle way, but he's not being too aggressive to where he's scaring off the soft Republicans and stuff. So I think for me, I think that's who we need in this moment, just for the other people from the other side that he can kind of coax over a little bit. As long as we can keep showing that Republicans are crazy, they want to take rights away, and as long as we can keep showing that, and he can show his record at the same time without looking too feeble, I think we'll be okay.
Well, and the best thing about Joe Biden, unlike Donald Trump or some of the others, he knows how the game in Washington is played. He's been in Congress for 40 or 50 years. He has connections. He knows how to play the games. He knows where to bluff and where to push and do all that stuff. He was the right guy to take the job after Donald Trump because we needed to start clawing back to some normality. And he was able to do that to a certain extent. He, uh, he's the right guy to do it. I mean, I've often said that we're so far right now, you almost need somebody who's progressive to pull us way left so we get back to center, or at least somewhere around
Mm-hmm.
there. But I think at this point, Joe Biden needs to be the candidate, and I don't think there's any question. There's nobody else going to be the candidate. There's people talking about it, but it's not going to happen. But if I was Joe Biden and I'm 82 years old and I won the presidency for another 4 years, and I know I can't run again. I know it's my last election, and I got 4 years. I've done a lot already.
Yep.
If I'm Joe Biden, I'm going full blown progressive if we've got the House and the Senate on our side, only worried about my legacy. Because if he goes full progressive, he could be thought of as the greatest president in the history of the country, along with FDR and people like that.
I think that is exactly what's going to happen. And not too many people on the right get it, but Chris Christie, he gets it. And he's
Yeah,
even said it. If we have a second term of Biden, he's going to pack the Supreme Court. He's going to do this. He's going to do that. Chris Christie gets it that if Biden gets that second term, he's going to go progressive. And I think Chris Christie also knows that once you go progressive and people start seeing the benefits of those progressive
right,
policies, is going to make it that much harder for Republicans to get into. The good thing about that is Chris Christie, he gets it, we get it. But the right, they don't get it. They don't see it. You know what I mean? They're just so far, they're just looking at Trump. So when you see somebody like Chris Christie who gets it, I think Nikki Haley gets it a little bit too. That's why she keeps trying to throw these little black woman jabs towards Kamala Harris. She gets it, but her party, they're not getting it. They're speaking to an empty room right now. But when I hear them talk and I hear them saying certain things, I'm like, oh yeah, they know what's up. They know that second term with Biden, they know what he's going to do. And he's already shown that he can be firm. Well, I don't know. He has to be too smart to outwit Kevin McCarthy,
no,
but he's been beating
no,
him at every term. So he can do it. I just think that right now, especially with things going on at the border, I think that he's just kind of waiting for that second term. I don't know if this made the news or not, but they shot a bullet over the border and it hit a citizen in Mexico. And
really,
they were saying it was a misfire or something to that effect. My brother, he's retired military, and I heard somebody else say it like, oh my God, I hope they're not shooting over people's heads. And I
right,
wasn't thinking about that until I heard two people from the military. And I think Bo from the Fifth Column, he has a YouTube channel. I heard him say it too. And so I'm like, I'm wondering if that's what they're doing. And I'm thinking the only reason Biden hasn't stepped in is because he's like looking ahead, like, I can't come in and make it look like I'm soft on the border because that's what jeopardize that second term. But I think we're going to see some changes with the border. Think we're going to see some progressive policies, and I think Biden's pretty much going to go balls to the wall on that second term. Well, at least
I,
that's what I'm hoping.
I'm hoping so too, and I think he's doing what everybody does in a negotiation. You don't blow your whole
Mm-hmm.
wad and say I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, because then the independents will say I'm not voting. That guy's crazy. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
voting for him. But once he's in, he's got nothing to
Yeah,
lose. There's no reason not to go progressive and deal with the
right.
health care. And I'll be
I
honest
think
with
he,
you. I
I
was
think he
telling my
knows that.
I was telling my wife
Mm-hmm.
this too. I said the student loan thing, don't think that's over. Because if we get the House and the
Mm-hmm.
Senate, that's going to come back and they're going to straighten it out.
And then
eh,
you've been seeing the unions have been pushing forward too, and Biden has been supporting them the whole way.
right, right.
I think we're
Yeah.
going to see that grow even further in that second term.
Yeah. I think it's going to be interesting, between now and 2024. I'm curious. One of the things that Biden has to deal with going into this election, because of his age at 82 in 2024, Kamala Harris is going to play a bigger factor in this. Because when you're 82, you could drop over tomorrow and nobody would be surprised just by virtue of your age. So that,
Yeah.
that puts Kamala Harris within a heartbeat away from the presidency. And I'm curious, as a Black woman, how you feel about that. How you feel about Kamala as a possible president.
I don't think anybody would have a problem with it. I really don't. I think that right now on the right, it's just like a fear mongering thing. Like, oh, do you really want this
Right.
Black woman in there? I think that's where it's coming from. Nikki Haley is like really trying to drive that point home. But I don't think she would be bad at all. I think she's pretty qualified. I think she can continue what Biden has started. I think the only thing about it is she's kind of being a punching bag for the Biden administration right now. Like, she got assigned to the border. Nobody can come to anything to make them agree on what's going on the
Right.
border. So that was kind of like a lose-lose situation for her. So I think that a lot of the not so nice parts of the presidency is being thrown on her. And I don't think we've had a chance to really get to know her outside of like the little strange little giggle that she does.
Yeah.
I happen to like it. I think it makes her unique, but it like turns her into a meme or whatever. But I think she's educated. I think she can handle it. I think she has experience. When I was listening to her speeches when she was running, she's a serious candidate, but she's a very personable type of person. I watched her like making cookies on YouTube. I
Right.
think she would be very endearing to America if she gets that platform. I don't think she'll let us down at all. I really
I,
don't. I think we'll be surprised at what she can do.
I don't think so either. Actually, in 2020, when we were looking to see who will be the Democratic candidate, she was in the mix. And
Hmm.
frankly, I liked her better than Biden because
Yeah,
I thought she was smart. I thought she was articulate, and I thought she was tough too. She wouldn't fuck
yeah,
around. She's a former prosecutor. And I think that, if it turns out that way, that may be a perfect situation because she's more progressive. Joe
hmm,
Biden gets in, if he has to resign or something happens 2 years in, that's going to fuck with the Republicans because if something happens 2 years in and Kamala takes over as president for 2 years, the crazy shit is she can run again in 2028. She can run again in 2032 and
yeah.
have 10
I
years
don't
as
know.
president.
Yeah, she could, and I don't know if a lot of people know, but she has some really good ideas on the wealth inequality that we have,
Yeah.
on like the different tax brackets and things like that, especially on like billionaires. She has some really good ideas on that. I just think that, the right is doing such a good job of making her like a character at this moment. But I think if you put her on a national stage, like she's just going for it.
Well,
I really do think so.
I personally think the way people look at Kamala Harris right now is the fault of the Biden administration. They need to
Yeah.
kind of
Mhm.
showcase her, put her in a good situation. It's going to be
Yeah.
important for Biden because they need that strong feeling about Kamala going into the 2024 election because of his age. And they really need to do that. I hope that's the intention.
Yeah. I think if they showcased her more, um, I don't know any women that just wouldn't like her.
Oh, no, no, she's very likable.
She's a little quirky, but I mean she kind of reminds me of like myself when it comes to my daughter and like we're in public. It's like, okay, I'm gonna be nice, but wait till we get home. Like, don't be
Uh,
acting up. I think like she could really handle things behind the scenes, but I think she could put up a good front and she could still be firm with dealing with the other side. I don't know what to call him right now, but just dealing with that. I think she'll do a good job.
Yeah, I have no qualms with her becoming president if that should be the case. I just hope that they give her more of the spotlight and show off her abilities and talents because she has many. And I liked her in
Hmm.
2020, but she's been kind of hidden right now with the
Yeah.
Biden administration. Like you say, she's not been given the best jobs that would maybe
Hmm.
accentuate her
Yeah, and
positive parts.
unlike the right, we don't really care about if it's a man or a woman, if you're gay, if you're straight, or we're not
Right.
really worried about that. We're just looking at the skill set and seeing how effective you can be towards moving us forward. I don't, I think we would be okay with it, but I think it'll be an endless loop on Newsmax and Fox. It'll never end when it comes to her. Every giggle she makes, they're gonna just put it on a loop. But I
Yeah.
think she can handle it though. I don't
I think
really
she
too
can
worried
too.
about it.
I'm going to ask you one more question. We got to wrap things up, but
Sure.
I've said before that I think that that Donald Trump was the punishment for us having the audacity to vote Barack Obama into office. We elected a black man into office, and they said that's fucking too far.
Yeah, I mean, and not once, but twice.
Yeah,
And then also it was kind of like a wake up call to them when their racist tropes didn't work, when they had the whole birtherism thing. And
yeah,
I don't know if you pay attention to that side now, but there's this huge conspiracy theory that Michelle, her real name is Michael, and she's a man and all this weird stuff, right?
yeah. I've seen
So
it.
I think that they threw everything and we voted for him anyway. But it took more than just the black community to vote for him. Like America as a whole elected him. And I think that is what angered them the most, is that I think they felt like they kind of lost that control that they thought they had. I
Well,
think that would be the same thing with Kamala Harris. You're going to put a woman of color in there over another white man. So now you have Barack Obama, he's black, his family's black, and now you're going to put another woman in there. I'm just wondering what the backlash to Kamala Harris would be. And I think it makes them feel like they're losing control
right.
over something, but you don't own this country. We're all in it together. You can't
That
just
could
claim your stake. And
that
I don't think
conspiracy
that's anything.
that conspiracy theory of Michelle Obama actually being a man. That's even. I'm embarrassed for the people who say that. That's just fucking ridiculous. I mean, we can look in Michelle's history from the time she was a little girl. It's pretty clear. She's had two
Mm.
children. The idea that they want to spew this stuff is just so flagrantly a lie. It's insulting to me that you would have
It
when
is.
somebody says that to me, I go, now you're not even fucking serious. You're not a serious person that I can even talk to.
No, because we don't argue on the merits anymore. We're arguing fact. So I think, if we were a healthy society, we could all agree that climate change is real. It's a fact.
Right.
What we will argue on is what we do about the situation. And I think now the way things are, we're arguing on facts. Is
Yeah.
climate change real? Isn't it real?
Yeah.
Is Michelle Obama a woman or is she a man? Like, there's no starting point of negotiation when you're arguing a fact. It's like the world is round. Why are we arguing whether it's flat or not? And I really do think that a lot of people have just kind of lost a grip, a really, really good grip on reality. I think they're going to fall pretty hard when they see evidence. Of course, there'll be some people that hang on to Trump, but
Yeah.
I think the country is sick, and I think that'll be kind of like giving us our medicine, and we can start the healing process from there. But he has to be held accountable, and we have to shine light on who he really is for those who are refusing to see him. You can't ignore it when it's like right in front of your face. So
And,
I think him being held accountable is like the first step in progress.
absolutely. I think, it used to be that we're not going to indict a former president. We need the country to heal. I think we need him held accountable for all the egregious crimes he's committed in order for this country to heal. It may not be what everybody wants to hear, but there are people. I mean, when he gets convicted,
Mm-hmm.
when he gets convicted, it's going to be like OJ. You're going to have people cheering in the fucking streets when he gets
But
convicted.
we have to, and for the simple fact of it being a deterrent, because you have Trump who has set the tone where you can go on national television, you can look America in their face and you can tell them bold-faced lies. You
Right.
see Marjorie Taylor Greene doing it. You see like all of the people behind him. You see Ted Cruz doing it. They're all doing it. And
Yeah.
so what's going to stop them from doing it if Trump is not held accountable? It's like, oh, hey, well, we can get away with it. And
Right.
I really do think he would be a deterrent for some of them, not all. But I do think it'll make them think twice. Like, oh, if they can take down Trump, they can take me down too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully that's what they get from it. I think that's just the starting point, and then we can move on from there. But he's too toxic
Yeah,
to have in society. He's too divisive. He's too toxic. I think once he's gone, that'll be the starting point.
yeah.
Until that happens, I don't see how we move on.
And he's absolutely incompetent. I mean, if he was the sanest guy in the world, the fact that he's incompetent is enough to kick his ass out. Well, Old Soul, thank you very much for spending some time with us. I was looking forward to this
Thank
because I
you for
enjoy your
having
emails.
me.
No problem.
Thank you.
Anytime you want
I
to come
really
back.
appreciate it. Thank
Any
you.
anytime you want to come back and talk some shit, we can do that. Because that's what we specialize here, talking some shit.
That's
Um,
right. Don't forget for the women and the girls out there, prochoice.org if you need any help, if you need transportation, if you need to go to a safe haven state like mine. You don't have to call, you can text, and we'll text you back and get you the help that you need. Just reach out. Don't suffer alone. Don't feel like you don't have any choices. Don't feel like you don't have any way out. There's plenty of people out there who care. I'm one of them. So
yeah,
there's plenty of other
absolutely.
people like me too.
And we thank you for doing that. That's very important. Now, for the folks at home, thank you for listening and taking the time out of your day. I hope you have a great day, and we will talk to you again tomorrow.